The show opens not with a beginning crawl like many Star Wars movies do, but instead a little bit of exposition telling us when this is happening after the fall of the Empire. And this really is a show about pirates, as it gives this kind of hyperspace lane, these ideas of ships boarding other ships. Piracy is really the problem, and we see that even from just the opening scene. The camera pans down like we would expect in outer space. We're in a galaxy far, far away, and you see this debris floating through as a massive ship starts to approach into screen, reminiscent of many other Star Wars projects. But this one is different, and things change fast, as all of a sudden this ship is overrun by pirates. This wasn't quite the beginning to Skeleton Crew that I expected, but I thought it set the tone. It set the stakes nice and high, that there is something that's happening here that is dangerous. This isn't just kids on an adventure, but there's actual danger out in the galaxy as these syndicates and gangs kind of take over. And so in this opening sequence, we see pirates boarding the ship, fighting for what they think is a giant haul, but we quickly find out that it is all just a setup. And we see now that these pirates have no loyalty to one another. Their only loyalty is to whoever can get them the most spoil. And I like that. I think that sets things up to be really interesting, as it feels like this show is probably going to be more of a pirate treasure hunt than we maybe originally expected. With either their intel being off or it being a trap and a setup, either way, this heist goes terribly wrong, as the vault is completely empty except for one shiny credit. And so now we open the scene on Whim, who is playing with his Jedi and Sith inspired toys. Something that all of us who grew up loving Star Wars know all too well. We lived in this universe. We thought that we were the Jedi and we were the Sith, and we were playing this in the backyard. So immediately there's a connection here to what we would have known growing up. And so we're drawn into this character. We're interested. He pours cereal with blue milk, which again is a callback to Star Wars of the past, yet he's living somewhere different. This is a new place in the Star Wars galaxy, one that feels very modern, or should I say, very much like Earth, but there's a dark secret hiding beneath all of it. Then we flip to a scene of Whim and Neil into a lightsaber duel as they're waiting for the school bus on At-Aden. And you notice, as they're doing this, this is what kids who have heard stories and legends of Jedi throughout the galaxies would do. I find it interesting and intriguing and kind of playful and silly in all the best ways. But it also sets up this friendship. This friendship is one kind of centered around this desire for something more, of thinking about, of dreaming about being the Jedi. But I have a feeling these kids have no idea or understanding that the Jedi are actually gone. And then the next scene takes us into the school. Yet as the students gather and are told that they're going to get a chance to contribute to the great work of the Republic, not the New Republic, but the Republic, foreshadowing what I think is going to be a major theme in this entire show, and this idea and understanding that everything is kept secret from what's really going on throughout the galaxy, and their only goal is this great work of their planet behind the barrier that no one is allowed to go past. Episode 1 does a great job of world building, character building, as we see Neil's family contrasted by Whim's. He's not really got anyone but his dad, and it's his dad who's working late nights, so he comes home to a house all alone and throws himself onto the couch, like many of us 90s kids probably did. And then we find out Fern's mom isn't just a random person, but instead is the same one who came and shared at the school about the importance of the great work.
I worry because there's not a place for everyone at the top.
There's not a place for everyone at the top. I think this is more than just the pressure put on kids to perform well in school. I think this is a real serious worry from this mom about the location of where her daughter is going to be serving in the Great Work. The Great Work, I think, is this caste system in this world that either you're in the top or you're one of the weaklings down below. This is kind of how our world works. Next, we see the scene that we saw in one of the teasers where Wim is missing the bus for assessment day, and he decides to try and take a shortcut, but yet that shortcut lands him in a very precarious place.
You are in violation of school attendance protocols.
He's brought into detention where he's cycling through his datapad looking at Jedi Temple images because he thinks he's found a Jedi Temple. Yet it's his father who then reprimands him for missing his assessment day, sternly warning him that tomorrow he must be there to take the test, that he's to go home right now and begin studying. But we know that he's not going to do that. Instead, he grabs his friend and they go on an adventure. Wim and Neil both end up at the bottom of the same ditch again, only to find out they have not been the first ones back to this site. Instead, KB and Fern have shown up before them. After uncovering this hatch, KB is able to hack into a control panel and is able to open up the door for the kids to look at what they've actually found. It's creepy and beautiful all at the same time, and now they have to decide, should they go and explore further? To escape a stranger in the distance, the kids decide to jump into the hole and hide, which leads them into the belly of this ship. Neil accidentally shuts the door, trapping the kids inside this supposed temple, and so they have to figure out a way to find the power source to open the door back up again. And in doing so, Wim, with his inquisitive desire for an adventure, hits the one button that supposedly turns the ship on and flies them past the barrier. And then in a moment, once they break through the barrier, they launch into hyperspace. Kids screaming their heads off because they are worried of what's happening. And that is how episode 1 closes. Just a few brief thoughts on the episode as a whole. That's the breakdown. And now here's some of my thoughts. 1, I think Ad-Aden is a very interesting place. I think it is fair to criticize this episode and say, at points it doesn't quite feel like Star Wars. It feels like instead of going to a galaxy far, far away with familiar elements, we instead are at a place that is very familiar with pieces of a galaxy far, far away kind of laid over it like a skin, like an overlay to help us see that it's different. And I think that that's fair. That's a fair criticism. But things like the music and some of the ways that different elements were used to remind us of where we are, I understand that Ad-Aden feels that way. And there's very familiar problems that these kids go through. However, I think the majority of the show is not going to be spent there. I think the majority of the show is going to be spent out, away, lost. And we see that in the next episode. A few other things that I found really interesting. 1, the first time they see stars, because all they've ever known is to look up to the sky and see a barrier. They see these red dots in the sky, not actual stars. So once this ship goes through the barrier, clearly the barrier isn't really stopping anything, but it's meant to just be this thing shielding them from the outside world, saying this is all we need. And even in some of the things said, like the teacher only mentioning the Republic, not the New Republic, like the idea of going through these Jedi, maybe not knowing that the Jedi are gone in the way that Wim wants to be a Jedi, but yet the Jedi have been wiped out since Order 66, yet he's interested in it. It's been years since that. If we're here after the time of Return of the Jedi, if this is happening in the time after Return of the Jedi, it's been decades since the fall of the Jedi, yet he is still interested in it. I find those types of storylines really compelling in this show to see where they're going to go. Now, honestly, this first episode was intriguing to me, but it didn't really grab me. It gave a lot of the foundation. It was the storytelling that we needed to meet these characters, and I thought their interaction together was really playful, was really fun, and it's only going to get better from here. But it's really in the second episode that things solidify in my mind as this being a show that I'm interested in watching. And if you want to check out that breakdown, you can click right here. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I'll see you over on that video. Remember, the Force will be with you always.